investigate everything from UFOs to cryptids to things that go bump in the night, and that's about it.
You investigate all the good stuff. What made you decide to become a cryptid investigator?
Well, I had my first Bigfoot sighting when I was 12 years old, and I was hooked from that point on. My brother is a parapsychologist, so we always had all kinds of books in the house, whether it be cryptid or paranormal. My mom would get premonitions, so it's just, I guess, natural, you could say, in my family.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. Since you were on the show last time, what have you been up to?
Well, recently we've just done a cemetery investigation, and it was spur-of-the-moment type deal. We were actually going to go back to the King and Queen's chambers, the stone chambers that they have here in the Northeast. We've never been to the King and Queen's. We've done a couple other stone chambers, but it seemed like every time we plan on going, it rains. So one of my investigators, Anthony, said, why don't we just do something tonight, spur of the moment? And I always carry some equipment with me in my backpack in my car, and we headed out to the cemetery, and we got some amazing evidence, Vic, just amazing stuff.
It sure sounds like it. Since everything we're going to talk about tonight happened around your home, please tell us what the area you live in is like. Is it rural or is it more urban?
I live in a semi-rural community. When I moved upstate New York about 20 years ago, it was a lot more rural than it is now. But I have plenty of woods behind my home. Actually, have to post signs so people don't hunt back there. And across the street from my house, we have wetlands. A lot of animals come by. My wife feeds everything under the sun, so we got everything coming through our yard, coyotes and black bear and foxes and turkeys, you name it, we got it, deer. Everything comes through my yard.
Sounds like a good place to live.
It is a good place to live, absolutely.
Oh, I'll bet it is. Until recently, have you had any strange things happening or strange creatures or animals coming around?
Not recently, no. I've had some experiences in the past, but nothing recently, no.
This past Monday night, you had been sleeping when you woke up feeling like something was wrong. What's the story behind that?
Well, it goes back to Saturday. I was talking to a couple of guys on the team, Brian and Anthony. We were planning on going back to Nuclear Lake in June, and we actually invited another talk show host, maybe a friend of yours, I believe, Chris from Crypto Normal X, to come out with us because he doesn't live far from us. He lives in New Jersey, and we're in New York. And we're talking about Nuclear Lake, and every time we talk about Nuclear Lake, crazy stuff happens. So Monday night, it was a very warm night up here in New York, and I was sleeping with the window open, something I don't normally do because I'm on the first floor. But I had the window open, and I was laying reversed, like what I normally would lay, where my feet would be down by the window. Actually, my head was down there, and I was facing the window, and my wife was laying normally, so I had her feet next to me. And at some point in the night, cat jumped up on the bed and got in between us, and everybody's sleeping like babies. And then I would say around 3 o'clock in the morning, the cat jumped straight up in the air and scratched the hell out of my arm when she jumped up out of the air. And I, woke up and I seen this cat in the air, and it hit the ground running. I could hear it run straight up the steps to the second floor into the kids' rooms and probably buried itself underneath the bed or something. And I was sitting there trying to figure out what the hell just happened when a cold shiver went down my spine. And all of a sudden I got the vibe that there was something outside the window. And the wall on my side of the bed faces the backyard, which faces the woods. And I'm looking out the window, and for some reason, and I don't know why, I'm looking for a dog head, a snout, ears, something along those lines. And I don't know why, but this is what I'm looking for, and I don't see anything. And then I get the feeling that there's something on the other side of the wall, but not bipedally, on all fours. And for some reason, I just felt like it was sniffing the corner of the window, like it was trying to get my scent, or it had my scent. And again, I have no idea why I was feeling this kind of vibe or this kind of energy, but I was just feeling it. And I'm not a psychic by any stretch of the imagination. I don't claim to be. My mom would always get premonitions, and every time we go to Nuclear Lake or we go on an investigation, I seem to get premonitions before we go. But anyway, I decided, I'm going to get up, because that's the kind of guy I am, and I'm going to go look in the backyard and see what the is going on back there. And I got sensor lights on the back patio that light up the whole yard. We go about 50 feet to the back of the yard to where the tree line starts. And as I'm walking towards the kitchen to go to the patio, I hear a little voice in my head that said, "Don't do it. Just don't do it." And I stopped dead in my tracks, and I'm debating with myself in my head, why shouldn't I do this? And then the thought came into my head, what happens if you throw those lights on and there's a 7-foot dog man standing at the sliding glass door looking in? Are you going to be able to live with that image burnt into your mind for the rest of your life? And at that point I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to go back to bed and go to sleep. So when I woke up in the morning, I thought it was a dream. But then I looked down at my arm and I seen the scratch from the cat, where the cat got me when she jumped. And I was like, wow, I guess that wasn't a dream. What a strange night, And I didn't think anything of it. And I'm not the type of guy who reads into stuff. I just let things play out the way they do. I don't try to figure stuff out. I just let stuff go wherever it's got to go. And, went to work, didn't think anything of it. Didn't even tell anybody about it. Didn't tell Brian, he was like my partner in crime, or my psychic or anybody. And then came back home. Again, didn't mention anything to my family. Then yesterday morning, I got up, regular routine, 4:30, like I always do. Got my stuff together for work, and I go out every morning around 5 o'clock, 4:45, just to warm up the Jeep. It's still cold up here in the morning, and I like to drive with just a t-shirt down to work. It's like an hour drive for me to work, my commute. So I got all my stuff in my hand, my bag, my cooler and everything, and I'm walking out to the Jeep, and I have the front light on over the door and the front light on at the end of the walkway, and I know once I step off the front deck, the sensor lights are going to go on and going to light up the driveway. And we just had a tree removed in front of the house, so I got like everybody's car in the driveway, so there's like 5 cars in the driveway. And I'm walking out to the truck, out to my Jeep, and I'm walking around the passenger side to put everything in, and I get the feeling that something is watching me. And I was like, why am I getting this vibe that something is watching me? So I throw everything into the back seat of the Jeep. And the coat that I wear, I usually wear like a windbreaker or something. I usually keep like a little pocket knife in it, in one pocket, and some pepper spray in the other, because the route I have to walk to go to work is the back roads, and sometimes I run across a pack of wild dogs, and I just don't want to be caught unarmed. So anyway, I'm turned around, and I'm looking under the deck, and it's almost impossible to see under the deck at this point because both of the sensor lights are blinding me. So I start to walk towards the deck. I have a feeling that there's something under that deck that's watching me. So I get to the front of my wife's car, and like I said, my Jeep is at the edge of the driveway, and then there's my wife's car and my daughter's car behind hers, and then there's the deck. And I'm walking, and I get to the front of my wife's car, and I'm looking, and man, I'm looking. I got my hand in front of my eye to block the light, and I'm seeing the biggest canine head you ever seen in your life. Man, I can't even describe how it looked like a grizzly bear's head with dog ears on it. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm looking at. And now my eyes are starting to really focus in, and I can see it looks like it's got a lion's mane, but it's short and it's tight, and it goes down into a V into its chest. And whatever is standing there is bipedal, and it's minimum 7 feet high, because I have 2 8-foot retaining walls, cinder block walls holding the deck up, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm trying to figure it out. And, it's just, the light bulb in my head is just not going on, but I'm walking towards it, and as I'm walking towards it, our outside cat, we have an outside cat that lives with us, and I had just opened up the sliding glass door at 5 o'clock in the morning to feed her, and when I feed her, the other indoor cats come out, so everybody gets fed at the same time. So I just finished feeding Callie, that's her name, and she usually comes around the front of the house and does her business in my wife's garden, and she's coming trotting around the side of the house, and she's crying, and she's whining, and she's really, really loud, and I'm thinking, man, this cat's going to wake up the whole neighborhood. She turns the corner of one of the retaining walls, these cinder block walls, and she does like a Halloween cat. She jumps straight up in the air. She gets like static electricity. She blew up. All her hair just puffed out. She hit the ground running, and I heard her running through the backwoods of my house, the deep woods. She sounded like a huge buck barreling through the woods because I could hear this cat running through the woods. And at this point, it freaked me out. I was like, what the hell is going on? What just scared this cat to death? So at this point, I pull out my little pocket knife, because that's all I got on me, and I pull out my pepper spray, and I'm walking towards this image that I'm seeing underneath my deck. And I get maybe to the front door of my wife's car, and something just says, you know what? This is not a good idea, man. You should just back out of here and go inside. So that's what I did. I backed out, and I went back in the house, and I finished making breakfast and doing what I usually do. And about a half hour later, I went outside. But before I went out, I grabbed my little tactical flashlight that I keep on my vest that I investigate with. It's an amazing little flashlight. It's got a strobe on it. It's disorienting, and it's brighter than. So as I come off the front deck, I hit that tactical flashlight, and I'm looking underneath the deck now to see if there's anything there, because now the deck is lit up. Underneath the deck is lit up like daylight with this little flashlight, and there's nothing there. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing there. Let me go and see if there was any signs of anything being here. And as I come around my daughter's car, which is the closest to the garage door, I notice a huge puddle against my brand new retaining wall. And I'm like, something just pissed on my wall. Brand new wall, something just pissed on it. So I'm looking at this big stain on my wall, and it's going down into the drain in the driveway, and it smells like ammonia. Now, I don't know if that's what animal urine smells like, but my urine doesn't smell like ammonia, but it smells like ammonia. So I'm like, I'm going to take a picture of this when I get home. So then I go to work and I do my thing, and, I call my partner, Brian, and I tell him about it. And he's like, you got to call the psychic. I call our psychic, Cindy, and she's like, yeah, ever since you mentioned, Nuclear Lake, crazy stuff is going on over here. And I don't know if it's not the same kind of energy that you had the last time you guys went there, and I don't know if you should go. And she's telling me all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on with her, the energy she's feeling. And she usually calls me, because she's like the last person we tell before we go on an investigation. She'll usually call me like a week before we go and say, where you guys going? I'm getting this, I'm getting that. She had a negative vibe. She was like, Al, I don't think you should do this, investigation. And I was like, well, you know what? It's still a month away. Let's get a month and a half, whatever it is. And let's, see what happens. Maybe this thing will turn, because I think there was actually some kind of meteor shower Wednesday night too. And I don't know if the celestial stars, any of that stuff, astronomy has anything to do with it, but I kind of feel like everything comes into play. Even the last time when we went to Nuclear Lake, there was a meteor shower. So then I started putting two and two together, and I started thinking about this, Monday night I had this strange experience. The minute we brought up going to Nuclear Lake and doing an expedition, we invited Chris to come out with us. He's thinking of coming. And now I got this creature standing underneath my front deck, and I'm trying to figure out how this thing knows where I live, And even the time when I seen it on the parkway, I was on my way to work, which was like 60 miles in the other direction. And I was talking to Brian. He said, yeah, but you did go back that Sunday and you did walk through the woods and maybe you left your scent. It's only 3 miles from where you seen these creatures the first time to your house. It's not that far a distance, and there's plenty of woods between the parkway and your house. This thing all has to do is cross like one or two little, side streets, and it's at your house. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's how it tracked me. I don't know if it was a spiritual thing, you know what I mean, that it found me. I just don't know. I just freaked me out. I mean, like I said, I couldn't get over, I didn't see any eye shine or anything like that, but I couldn't get over the size of the head of this thing that I was looking at. And I wasn't sure, you know, Vic, it didn't look like the image on your show. You know, that image you have on your banner didn't look like that at all. It looked more like people would call a dire wolf or something like that. When I seen that big head, the first thing I thought of was Anubis. I don't know why. I mean, it was just a lot of strange stuff going on. A lot of strange, I mean, just, I don't know, man. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's one thing when you go out into the field to research these things and have an encounter, but if they come around your home, that's a totally different matter altogether, so I can understand if it shook you up at least a little bit.
You know, I wasn't really shook up. I kind of took it with a grain of salt, but I'm just dumbfounded how or why this thing was here. You know what I mean? I just don't know why it came to my house or why I'm having these. I don't know if this is a premonition of what we're going to find when we go out in June. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, that I'm getting premonitions of what we're going to run into when we go out and do that expedition in June. You know, not that we're going out specifically to look for dogmen or anything like that. I never go out looking for dogmen. I always go out looking for just like Sasquatches or any kind of strange anomalies or anything like that. Just, I never, ever, at this point in my team's career, gone out strictly looking for a dogman. But we know the dogmen are there because when we went to Nuclear Lake and we had our experience with the Sasquatch whooping and throwing the rocks at us and bluff charging us, I was drawn back there a couple months later, and we did find that den in the middle of the swamp, and we do believe that there are images in that den that we were able to see when we blew up the photographs on like a 55-inch screen TV. We've seen like a giant dog head looking one way. We've seen what looked like tiny monkeys, young monkeys, juveniles in the den. We even seen what looked like a type 2 squatch staring back at us, growling at us. You know what I mean? It didn't quite have that dog kind of head. It had more like a bear kind of head, you know, or not a baboon. Yeah, baboonish too, I guess you could describe it. So we know these creatures are there. We just assume that wherever there's Sasquatches, there are dogmen as well. So I don't know if this is a premonition of what's to come in the future, but I just don't know, man. I just don't know.
Well, it sure does make you wonder.
Yeah, that it does.
Yeah, I'd say it does. Since your window was open Monday morning, did you ever smell any strange scents?
Nope, never smelled any kind of strange scent. Nope, not at all. It was just nice, clean, crisp air coming through. It was beautiful sleeping weather.
Yeah, sounds like it was. When all this was going on and you got out of bed, did you notice a lack of ambient noise outside?
Yes, I did. I did notice that. There weren't any bullfrogs creaking or crickets or anything, but I kind of wrote it off as to the weather because it was still chilly, you know, outside. And I don't know if those creatures are hibernating when it's cold out like that. I know in the dead of summer, the frogs and the crickets and everything are so loud out here that you have to close the windows, otherwise they keep you up at night. But I don't know if the cold had anything to do with it or the creature had anything to do with it. But no, I did not hear anything.
Yeah, it could have been the cold that was doing that, but I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. But that was the first thing that popped into my head. I was like, you know what? I don't hear anything outside. You know, there's usually something going on.
Yeah, that's pretty strange.
Yeah.
When you saw that dog man standing there, did it seem to react when you noticed it?
No. It was standing there perfectly still, like a shadow, just not moving. Just standing there, like it was just observing. But again, I didn't see any eye shine, and I don't know if that's because it was under the deck and all the lights were on me. And I was looking for eye shine because, you know, my brain flashed back to that morning on the parkway when I seen those two creatures, and And there wasn't any lights on the parkway other than, you know, the moon. And those creatures' eyes were lit up like big red, orange golf balls. And this thing, I don't know if it was standing there with its eyes closed or what, but it was in the shadows and it wasn't moving. It was staying perfectly still.
That's awfully creepy. It almost would have been better if it would have done at least something when you saw it standing there instead of standing motionless.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think if it would have done something, it may have scared the living crap out of me, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, if I would have seen its eyes blink, I think that would have just sent the chills right through my spine. As, you know, standing there like a shadow was a lot more calmer for me, you know?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on what it would have done.
Absolutely. I mean, if it would have picked up the back of my daughter's car and slammed it, I think I would have been out of there in a heartbeat. I would have been running for the 12 gauge, you know?
And I can't say I'd blame you either for doing that. When you went to work yesterday morning after seeing that dog, man, were you worried about your family's safety?
No, not really, because I felt like it was there for me. I didn't feel like it was there to threaten the family. I spent the whole morning, like I said, I got an hour ride to work. I commute, and the whole way down, I just kind of thought on it. Man, I got to talk to somebody. That's why I contacted you immediately. I know you're the go-to guy. And plus, I knew my son-in-law is home, and he's packing heat. He's getting ready to become a state trooper and stuff. So he's licensed to carry, and he's 23 years old. My son is home. He's 18. He's in the prime of his life. If I would have thought it was like a homeless person or something like that, I mean, even if they threw a rock through the back door to cut in, you know, you still have two young guys in the house. The women weren't alone.
Well, thank goodness for that. And I know you said it didn't rattle you there, Al, but when you contacted me yesterday, I got the impression that you were shook up about that. And I'm thinking to myself, when we're talking about what had happened to you, I'm thinking, wow, what could have shook Al Santoriga up? It must have been bad.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I was shook up, but I was like just baffled and confused. I was just trying to make heads or tails of it, you know, and you know, like I said, I knew you were the guy to talk to, and so I just reached out to you. I mean, you know, maybe I was a little, you know, in shock and I didn't even realize it. I don't know. Like, I could have been.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, when you go out into the woods and look for them and have an encounter, that's one thing. But when they come to your house looking for you, yeah, that takes it to a whole new level. So if you were shook up about it, I could definitely understand.
Yeah, I mean, you know, normally something like that, if it came to my house, I'll be brutally honest with you, would piss me off. I would be pissed off by how dare you come to my house looking for me. But I didn't have that reaction yesterday. I wasn't pissed off. I was just more dumbfounded. I didn't know if what I was seeing was flesh and blood creature or if it was a spiritual thing or like a shadow. You know, was it just sending its image here? I don't know. I mean, I just got no clue. All I know, it was the biggest head I ever seen in my life. I couldn't wrap my mind around the size of its head. I could see why when people see these things up close and personal and they're snarling or growling, that it would burn an image into your brain that would give you nightmares forever, because that head, the head I seen, and like I said, it was underneath an 8-foot deck, and it went right up to the bottom of the deck. I mean, and I don't even know if it was hunched over. You know, could you imagine something like 9 feet tall? That, you know, like that, just mind-boggling, just mind-boggling.
Yeah, definitely not good to see. You said that area under the deck wasn't well lit until you came back out with that flashlight. But when you were standing there looking at the dog, man, were you still able to see details like its leg structure or anything else?
You know what, Vic? It took a little while for my eyes to really, because I had to put my hands up in front of my eyes to block it from the floodlights. But it took a little while for them to focus in. But once I focused in, I did see shadowy detail. I seen the ears, pointed ears. I seen this huge, huge head. Not only was it long, but it was wide. It was a wide head, at least 2 feet wide, I would say minimum. And I seen what looked like a lion's mane. but it was short and tight, and it came down to a V in his chest. And from that point on, I couldn't see anything below it. I don't know if it had canine legs or if it had Sasquatch legs. I don't know if it was a type 2 or a type 1. I'm not sure. All I know, it was just the biggest head I ever seen in my life. I can't over-exaggerate how big this creature's head was. And for it to be underneath my deck, in the shadows, lurking, it's just really creepy. And I know these things do creepy stuff like that. I know they got like a twisted side to them where they can do stuff to people to just creep them out. And my first reaction was to go get the gun, the shotgun. But then I said, no, I don't want to go to war with these things. Because I've heard plenty of stories, people who go to war with these things, doesn't turn out good for them or their family members. So I said, no guns.
Have you done anything to try and protect your family since you had that experience?
Again, like I said, I'm not sure if it was a physical being or if it was a spiritual being or some kind of entity. But I was going to sage the property and the house today, and I could still sage the inside of the house. But it's been raining up here for like 2 days now, and I can't go outside and sage because the yard is like a mud pit, and my wife would kill me if I came in the house with mud and throw up mud all over the house. So I'm going to let that go until the grass dries up a little bit, and then maybe I'll sage the outside of the house and maybe even salt the perimeter. I don't know. I mean, that's just what popped into my head. Something said I should do that, so I'm thinking of doing that.
Well, whatever you do, I sure hope it works for you and it doesn't come back.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of time between now and June, so if that was a premonition and that's just the beginning, it started early.
It sure sounds like it did. When you got home last night, your wife was freaking out. What happened to make her do that?
Yeah, I'll come through the door last night around 7 o'clock by the time I get home from work. And she's like freaking out on me. She's like, oh, the sliding glass door in the back came off the track. I can't get it open. And she's going, it almost fell on me, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And she's like, the door is off the track. And I was like, no, it's not. Because I opened that door at 5 o'clock in the morning to feed the outside cat. And the door slid fine, There was nothing wrong with it. And she goes, well, it's not on the track anymore. And it almost fell out of the track and hit me in the head. So I went over and I looked at it, and it's not on the track. You could only get it open maybe 3 inches now. So, of course, I'm off today, so that was one of the things on my honey-do list was to fix the back door, So I had to take it out of the track and then retrack it. But I was talking to my partner, Brian, and he said, look for, like, handprints or scratch prints on the vinyl frame or a paw print on the glass, like an oily paw print. But like I said, it's been raining for 2 days up here, and I don't see any handprint or anything like that. And I'm not walking around the back of the house to see if there's any scratches on anything, because like I said, the mud and the grass hasn't grown in yet. We've still got a lot of mud out here, so I'm waiting for the grass to grow in. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know how it came off between 5 o'clock in the morning when I got up and 7 o'clock when she got up. I don't know how that thing came off the track. It's just beyond me.
What do you think, Al? Cat burglar?
No, I don't think it's a cat burglar, no. I don't know. I honestly don't know, man. I'm not one of those guys who automatically jumps to assumptions and assumes this and assumes that. I try to rationalize everything and try to work it out. And, for the life of me, I mean, like I said, I know my son-in-law leaves after I do, like an hour before she gets up, but he wouldn't have any reason to go out the back door. He doesn't feed cats. He doesn't do anything, He just grabs his cooler, jumps in his car, and he goes to work. It's just me and my wife who play with that sliding glass door in the morning. And why he was off the track 2 hours later is I have no answer for you. I really don't. I mean, I don't know. And Brian was telling me, Brian was like, that's how you get those things opened if they're locked. I'm like, what are you talking about? I keep a 2x4 in the back of it so you can't slide it. He goes, exactly. You can't slide it, but if you wedge something in it, you can pop it up off the track and the door will fall in. And I was like, well, the door is locked, number one. So I don't know if you can lift it up off the track because the way the lever locks, it locks in the up position. You know what I mean? So I don't think you could lift it too high, number one. And number two, there's nobody out there. all my neighbors are retired IBMers. You know what I mean? There's nobody up here, you know. I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, we can't go back and know for sure what did that, but dogmen are the kings of psychological warfare. Of course, like you mentioned earlier, we didn't see what did that. All we can do is guess. I think in most cases, situations like this, it's something else besides a dogman, but considering what you've got going on, I guess we'll never really know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here 22 years, and I've never had an issue with my property of people wandering through at night or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's quiet, family-oriented community. I know all my neighbors. I've known them for the last 20 years. Everybody knows everybody else. And like I said, I don't leave the sensor lights on at night like I do with the garage, the driveway one, because I just figured if someone comes into the driveway, that's the cars, the lights will go on. But I don't leave them on in the back because we have so many animals that run through the yard at night. The deer come down and graze on the grass, and the lights would be on all the time. And like I said, my bedroom faces the backyard, so the lights would be on all the time. And so I keep the lights off. I just turn those lights on as I feel it necessary. So I may leave them on for a couple of days.
Yeah, I think I'd do the same if I were in your situation.
I think I will. I think I'll leave them on for a few days, just, you know, a couple of days, just so this anxiety passes. Not knowing is the worst thing. If I would have found a person's shoe print in the backyard or something, or a dogman print or a Sasquatch print, at least I have an idea of what's messing around the house, but there's nothing out there. Like I said, I didn't walk around the back, but I did walk on the deck. I'm towards the side of the house. I have steps that come down off to the side. And I didn't see any kind of prints in the mud, so.
That's awfully strange. Well, before we get out of here, Al, I just want to remind the listeners, if you're looking to buy a Dogman Encounters t-shirt, please visit dogmanencounters.com/store. Well, having said that, Al, it's about time for us to get out of here. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yeah, just if your listeners are interested in going to the Bronxville Paranormal website, it's back up and running. We were hacked there for a little while, but we're back up and running, and we're getting ready to do an evidence review from the cemetery investigation we did. The report's already up there. We'll have the evidence up there for people to look at if they're into that kind of stuff. And does the shirt come in black? I seen it today, and I seen it in the red. Does it come in black, Vic?
It does come in black.
All right, I'm going to have to get me one of those because I thought it was really cool, so I'm definitely getting one. Do you have one for the Bigfoot stuff too as well?
Not yet, but that's in the works. It will be available soon.
Because I'm into that stuff. I love those shirts, man. I seen your shirt online and I seen it. I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting me one of these. I just got to get it in black.
Well, thanks for supporting the show. You know I appreciate it.
You're my man. Anytime I have any kind of cryptid question, I always come to you because I know for one thing, you know what you're talking about. Number two, you're not going to bullshit me. And three, you know, you always get back to me. You never leave me hanging, so.
Well, glad to do it. That's what I'm here for. Anytime you need me, please do let me know. Well, thanks again so much for your time, Al. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had an encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest is Susan. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic. It's nice to be here with you.
Well, it's great having you. Susan, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay, I am 58 years old. I live in the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Basically grew up in Kentucky. Lived in California for about 18 years in the Bay Area. While I was there, I worked in the entertainment industry and did security work. And then I moved back home in 1993 and have been back here ever since.
Sounds like you've had an exciting life.
Yeah, I could probably write a book.
Yeah, from sharing some of the things you shared with me in the I'd say you could. You've had some interesting things happen, no doubt about that. Before you had your encounter, what were your thoughts on the possibility of creatures like dogmen or Sasquatch existing?
None. I absolutely did not believe that they were real. I thought they were a myth. I thought that werewolves or dogmen were due to mold and people hallucinating in the French countryside in the 11th century. There was no way that these things could be real. There's just no way. I didn't accept it.
Yeah, the mold you're talking about, I think you're talking about what's called ergot. It grew on breads and things like that, and when people ate the bread, they hallucinated and they thought they were seeing things that weren't really there. A really creepy effect.
Exactly. And I love history, and especially European history. And I had read articles regarding this and, the man in France that had killed all these women and thought he was a werewolf. And I thought that, okay, that's just what it was. It was somebody who ate moldy bread and went crazy, and that's the end of that story. They're not real. They don't exist.
Well, it sure would be nice and convenient if that was what the truth was, but we both know that's not what happened, and that's not the truth.
I know now. I am a believer now.
Yeah, you do know now. Please tell us about Darby.
So, a friend of mine in California had a ranch, and I'll tell you exactly where it was. It was in the Murphy, Angel Camp, Copperopolis area. And we would go up there and spend weekends, and there was this huge hill that was up on his property. And he used to tell us that he had a Sasquatch up there. And having a wicked sense of humor, I named him Darby, and I used to relentlessly tease him about it. I didn't believe Sasquatch was out there. I didn't care what anybody said. Again, they don't exist. And I feel terrible because in the back of my mind, I could tell that he really, truly did believe that this was on his property. And whenever he would leave to go up to the ranch, I would say things like, hey, tell Darby I said hi, and tell Darby we'll be up next weekend, and teased him relentlessly about it. I now realize that I owe that man a huge apology, and that I'll be making shortly to him in person. I will never, ever doubt what anybody tells me they see again. Ever.
Well, I hope you don't beat yourself up too much. I mean, after all, you behaved the way most people would have behaved in that situation. You just didn't know back then. You sure do know now, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I definitely know now.
Yeah, I'd say you do. One summer when you were a kid, you were staying with your grandparents and wanted to camp out, but your grandmother wouldn't let you. Why wouldn't she let you do that?
Well, it was kind of a crazy thing because my grandmother was, she's from down in Corbin, Kentucky, down in the country. And, they're just kind of real simple people down there. And she's real sweet. I never saw her lose her temper, ever. And the piece of property that they lived on, they had a cabin. And about 10, 15 feet outside the back door, something like that, is where the beginning of the mountain was. There was a sheer granite wall there. And then from there, it tapered back, and it was all woods, and it was at an actual mountain. And I guess I was about, I'm trying to remember, I'll say somewhere between 7 and 9 years old at the time. And we were spending the summer down there, and I decided I wanted to camp out in the backyard. And I asked my mom, and she said yes. And so I went and got my little blankie and my little pillows and stuff, and I'm making my little camp back there. And the next thing I know, my grandmother comes out the back door, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to sleep out here tonight." She says, "No, you're not." And she said, "There's a hairy man up on that hill. He will come down and get you." And I'd never seen my grandmother angry or forceful before. And she actually grabbed me by the arm and dragged me into the house. And she said, "You are absolutely not sleeping out here. You are sleeping in this house." And it was very upsetting to me because I had never seen my grandmother like that before. But at the same time, I remember thinking, she's talking about some crazy, wild mountain man. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking an old man with a long beard, long hair, you know, just living wild up in the mountains. Now I realize what it was she was really saying. You know, that there was like a Sasquatch or something up on that mountain that she was afraid was going to come down and get me. And then years later, on another trip down there, all the local kids, they would get together and they would camp out in the cemetery. And I wanted to go with them. You know, we were in our teens by that time. And she was adamant, absolutely not. You are not camping out. You are not sleeping out ever. And it terrified her, the thought of us sleeping out in the open somewhere.
It sure makes you wonder if she had a Sasquatch encounter of her own that made her feel that way.
You know, again, it was one of those things where, as a child, it mystified you and it confused you, and you kind of look at them and go, "Well, gee, what's that about?" But then time goes on, you put things out of your mind. And it wasn't until this situation happened to me here that suddenly that situation with her came into like a clear view. I realized then that she really was very frightened of something up on that hill coming down and getting her grandchild. And like I said, it's taken me 50 years to actually really realize how scared she was.
Yeah, it sounds to me like she must have had some sort of experience with something in that area to make her act that way. What it was, I guess we don't know, but from the way she responded, it sounds like it must have been a Sasquatch.
You know, unfortunately, she passed away about 20 years ago. But like I said, she was one of those real strong country kind of women. They're sweet, but they're tough. You know, there's not too much that shakes them up. And that shook her up. It scared her.
Yeah, when you see someone like that who's that tough, respond that way to something like that, yeah, it's going to be pretty unsettling, especially when you're a kid the way you were.
Yeah. But again, it's one of those things, you know, as you grow older, you go on with your life, you put it behind you. You don't think about it until, as I told you, you come face to face with reality.
Exactly, until you have an experience like the one that you had. You tried to suppress your encounter until recently. Why did you decide to come forward now and talk about it?
There's been a few things that have happened in the last 6 months here in the neighborhood that I live in. My encounter actually took place pretty close to where I live, about a mile away. And part of me, again, you know, my background with my family is they're police officers and they're military, and I worked security. And you have to be very aware of your surroundings. You have to make clear, concise choices when things go bad. You can't panic. You have to have your sense about you at all times, is the way that I was raised. And when I had my encounter, I actually feel like my brain shut down. It just could not accept what had happened. Again, it comes back to cold reality is what you're taught, what is preached to you, and then your reality is busted. And everything that you grew up believing it doesn't apply anymore. Like we talked about, there really are monsters under your bed sometimes. And then what happened in the last 6 months, we started having problems within our neighborhood of something moving around through the backyard. And it's big. You can tell it's whatever this is, it's big. And I actually witnessed it kind of like weaving back and forth back in the far part of my yard one night. And other people have seen this dark figure jumping over fences. And then the next thing that happened was we have a post here. It's called Northern Kentucky Pet. And all at once we started seeing notices where people's pets have gone missing. And coyotes coming down into the neighborhood from the area where my encounter took place are now down here in our neighborhood. But it's like I explained to you that I've seen good, healthy coyote in California, and they were fairly large. I've seen medium-sized ones over in Ohio. But the ones that we have coming down here are skeletal, like they're starving. They're sickly looking. And that's not normal. We've had situations where we've witnessed spotlights going on behind houses. And a sheriff's deputy and I one night witnessed a large black figure jumping a fence for the house across the street from us. So we know that there's something down here in our neighborhood, and I just get this terrible feeling of dread sometimes. I can't go into my backyard anymore, and that was always my sanctuary. I actually get physically ill at the thought of going back there. In the summertime, I love leaving my kitchen door open. I can't do that anymore. And as I explained to you earlier, I had to shoot and kill one of my dogs because I believe that what was back there terrified it so much the night that happened that it literally tried to chew itself out of the door and attacked my other dog, trying to get away from whatever was back there.
Having to deal with all this in such a short period of time, that is an awfully tough pill to swallow. Not easy at all to deal with. No.
And it's like I explained to you, my Smoky Bear was a great dog, and to anybody listening, he was an Anatolian. And, I have to stress that because these dogs are fearless. They're fearless fighters. They will fight to the death. And that dog went absolutely crazy that night from fear, trying to get away from whatever it was in the backyard. And, as I said, I had to shoot him. There was no stopping him. My other dog got in his way of him trying to get out and away from whatever that was, and he attacked him. So I know that there is something down here in our neighborhood, and I really believe it is what I had my encounter with.
Well, I definitely hope it's not the dogman you had that encounter with, but after you've shared all the things you've shared with me, I wouldn't be surprised in the least if it was, unfortunately. Speaking of which, let's talk about that encounter now. In 2013, you had an encounter with a creature you called That Thing. Please tell us about that encounter. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Sure. It was like the last week of November. I worked up in Sharonville, Ohio, and one of the ways to come home was down 275. And it was really, really cold that night. We were having one of those polar vortexes, and I had trouble starting my car. And also, I have to tell everybody this, I'm a heart patient. I've had open heart surgery, so I have wires and stuff that are holding, my rib cage and everything together, and that plays a big part in what happens later on. So I had to take my time warming up the car, and what normally takes 30 minutes to get home took almost an hour. So it was about 7:30 around there. And I bring up the heart part because I had taken Lasix before I left work. And if anybody who takes that, you know that when it kicks in, you have to go to the bathroom right then. There's no waiting. And I had just gotten off my exit which is on Taylor Mill Road. And I knew I wasn't going to make it the next mile down to my house. So where I live at, where that exit is up on top of a hill. And there is an even larger hill to the left. And that's where this area of Fidelity Investments was located at. Now, it's a beautiful area. Years ago, it used to be a huge farm, but they bought it and they put a couple of office buildings up there. There's walking trails up there. And it's also a shortcut from Taylor Mill over to another very populated area, which is called 3L Highway. So you can cut through on this drive called Magellan Drive. So I made the turn to go up into Fidelity. So I knew I just had to pull over and go to the bathroom. There just wasn't no waiting. I go up to Magellan, and off on my left is a little dirt driveway, and it's actually crescent shaped. And when you go and you turn on this little dirt driveway, it actually goes up. You're going up a hill. And in between you and the road, there are bushes on the left-hand side till you get to a certain point, and then there's guardrails. On the right-hand side of the road, which faces the road, there are bushes there, and there's just enough room for one car. So I get up there, get out of my car, and I'm looking around, making sure there's nobody there, there's no traffic coming, go ahead, do my business. And stood up, and I'm doing my pants up, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if I heard something or just a feeling. But I looked behind me, and literally about 5 feet away from me, there was 3 deer there huddled up together. And I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, why aren't they running? And then I realized they weren't looking at me. They were looking across the road. Now, from where I am, I'm up on a little hill. You go down, there's a 2-lane road there. And then across the road is another set of bushes. And about 50 feet to the left of those is a street light, but it's a very dim street light there. But back behind those bushes, there's also trees back there, like a little wooded area. And then that goes down a hill to an area called Crosby Lane. And then from there, that goes down another hill, and you're back down on the main street, which is Taylor Mill. So I'm looking back across the road and trying to figure out what the deer were looking at. And all at once I saw this movement. And I wasn't quite sure what it was I was seeing. I could see this outline, and it was huge. I'm 5'5", and I've been down there, and those bushes are over my head. And now this is winter. There are some leaves, but they were pretty bare. And from the street lights, all at once I realized I'm seeing this outline of this massive creature. I could see it from the chest up clearly. But again, it was in shadow, so I'm seeing outline. I realized that it has dog ears. And it's still not connecting in until I see those ears turn. And then it growled at me. And I felt that growl in my chest. My whole chest vibrated. And I honestly believe that's because of the wires in my chest. I felt the vibration. And I don't know if it was instinct or just dealing with dogs and training them. The next thing I did was I jumped down to where I was on all fours. And I don't know why, but I growled back at it. And as I'm watching it, it turned its head to the right towards the streetlight. It raised its head up, and I could see its snout, and I could see it sniffing the air. And then it turned around, its head turned around, and it looked at me again. And by that time, I had stood back up. And I don't know why, but I shooed the deer I was like, go. And when I looked back at where it was standing, it had moved. It had moved to my right. The terror I felt was something I've never experienced in my life before. It's like I told you, I really truly believed I was going to die that night. And I felt that it was going to the right because there were more bushes down there. And the way where I was at with my car, there were bushes that kind of cut off the view of the street. So it could cross the street, but I wouldn't see it if it crossed the street. And I really felt like it was going to circle behind me. And I quickly got in my car because I thank God I did not turn it off. And I got in my car and I took off and I shook all the way home. I was shaking so bad I was weeping. I could not get in my house fast enough. And went immediately into the bathroom where I thought I was going to throw up. A few days later, now, I spoke to my husband that night when he got home. And he knew something was wrong. And he asked me what had happened. And as I explained to you, my husband is one of those people. He has had experiences of his own and other ways. So he's a believer in those things that he has seen personally. If he doesn't see it, it's not real to him. So I didn't tell him what I saw. What I did tell him was that, I told him about stopping up there, going to the bathroom, seeing the deer. I told him that something was very, very wrong up there. And I told him that I was never, ever going back up there again. Ever. And a few days later, we were in the car, and we had to go over to Walmart. And he was going to go his normal way, which is a shortcut up through Fidelity. And I'm telling him, no, I don't want to go up there. No, that place terrifies me. No, I don't want to do this. And he's like, well, let's just come up here and look around and see what's going on. And every hair on my body stood up. I got that same feeling of fear and dread. I was stomping on the floorboard like I was trying to get to the gas to get out of there. And I have never gone back up there since. It's like I told you, I don't care if Jesus Christ comes down from the mountain to preach a sermon. I am not going to be there ever again, ever.
That's not easy to see something like that. You spend your whole life being told that monsters don't exist. One night you find out that they do. That's not easy to deal with.
No, and it's like I explained to you, I actually felt like the best way I know to describe it is I actually felt like my psyche got shattered. Every belief I ever had was just shattered.
Yeah, we like things to be predictable and easy to understand in life, but when they go outside those bounds, yeah, that's when things start to fall apart pretty quickly. You just said that you didn't tell your husband about seeing the dog man the night when you got home and saw him, but have you told him about that since?
No, because I kind of didn't know where or how to start. It's one of those things of, how do you start that conversation? Honey, remember the night that I got terrified up, in the wooded area? And by the way, it was a dogman werewolf that I saw. How do you start that conversation? And that was why I finally, like I told you, I researched a lot of people that say that they're experts in this. And there's just a lot of them that the things they were saying I just couldn't get into. I thought they were too outlandish. I felt like they weren't dealing with the subject seriously enough until I came upon you. And I listened to several of your shows, and then I made the decision that you were going to be the first person that I spoke to about this. And it's like I told you, the first step was I needed affirmation. I needed to know that I didn't stroke out. I wasn't hallucinating. It was real.
Well, I'm so glad you did decide to reach out to me. You said you never did tell your husband about that encounter, but have you told anyone else about it?
No, but I kind of took a first step, as I told you today, and that was in speaking to my neighbor, the deputy. I finally asked him, what do you think you saw that night jumping the fence at our neighbor's house across the street? And he said he wasn't sure. He said he just knew it was big and it was black, but I could tell that it bothered him, that what he saw, just by the look on his face, I could tell he's been thinking about it. So I think probably my next step is I'm going to ask him, does he think it was an animal? And then maybe open the door and go from there since we both saw it. And I think if I can have that conversation with somebody that has seen it and witnessed it, then I'll be able to go on and have the conversation with my husband. Like I said, my husband's a really, really great guy, but he's very analytical, nerdish. He has to have proof before he will accept things. And I even told you, he had a UFO encounter. Now, you can talk to him about UFOs all day long. He's right there with you because he saw one. But for anything else, he'll listen to you, but he's kind of, I'm not so sure, I have to see it, that kind of thing.
Well, I can appreciate him feeling that way. If it would benefit you any, I could always set it up so he's in a position where he most likely will see a dog man. It's up to you on that. If he has an interest in seeing one, I'm pretty sure I could set that up.
Well, that's something that we may have to do in order for him to recognize what it was I saw. But again, like I said, he knows that something very traumatic happened. We've been together a long time, and as a matter of fact, we were high school friends. He's known me almost all my life. And he knows I don't get upset that easily, and I don't freak out about things. And in the business that I used to work in, I've had terrible things happen around me. I've had people get shot and knifed, and, I've had women come and tell me that they were raped at concerts and what have you, and, have to deal with these things. And he knows I'm not one of those people that falls apart like that. And I did that night. I have to admit, I fell apart.
Well, let me tell you, even the toughest people tend to fall apart when they come face to face with one of these things, so please don't hold that against you. Is there a physical feature that the dogman had that shook you up most?
To be perfectly honest with you, it was the massiveness of this creature, the shoulders. It's like I told you, it had a wrestler's type of neck. It was so thick. I could tell that. And then the ears. When I saw the ears turn, I was like, my God, this is real. This is a living thing. And then when it lifted its head and I could actually see its snout, I remember thinking, my God, there is no way I would ever be able to get this thing off of me if it comes across the road.
Yeah, if that happened, you definitely wouldn't have had a chance of doing that. You only got a chance to see this dogman from the shoulders up because of the bushes it was in.
Right. I mean, I could see an outline through the bushes, but it was blurred because of the bushes and the leaves and what have you. I could see like a darker image back there behind the bushes, but it wasn't clear like the shoulders were. I mean, I could definitely see muscle structure. You could see bulges, but it wasn't like defined. It's like more like a ripple effect, if you know what I mean. You could see a ripple effect in the outline.
Yeah, being as dark as it was that night and being in the bushes, yeah, you just did the best you could to make out details, so I think you did a great job with that. How was the size of its head in proportion to its body?
Its head was huge, but not overly large. In other words, like I told you, when it turned its head, I could actually make out an outline of the jaw muscle as it opened its mouth and it raised its head up to sniff the air. I've heard some people say in various interviews, oh, his head was so broad it covered its shoulders. No, this wasn't like that. It was proportionate to the body, to me, is what it looked like. It was big, but it wasn't expansive. Like the jaws, the cheeks, the sides. I've listened to a lot of interviews trying to come to grips with what I saw, and some of the descriptions just didn't make sense to me. When they talk about these huge heads, and like I said, it covered the shoulders, and this didn't do that. I would say it was large. It was a large canine head, but its largeness fits the body, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. You still live about a mile from Fidelity Insurance. Why haven't you moved?
Basically because my husband is 2 years away from retiring, and we own several pieces of property in the area. And our goal through our investments and what have you in our real estate was to sell off properties and be able to retire down to Florida. But he can't retire for 2 more years. Otherwise he's going to take a huge hit on the investments and that kind of thing, which is, money we need in order to do what we want to do in the future. And I keep telling myself, come on, you're a tough girl. You can take it. Just stay out of that area. Everything will be fine. You can suck it up for 2 years. Until, like I said, recently, what started happening about 6 months ago. And, I'm having a real hard time with the fact that it might be in our neighborhood now. Again, I keep telling myself, you can get through this. You know what's out there. You know to be careful. Don't go sit in the backyard anymore. Don't sit out on the front porch anymore. And just, I'm aware. I watch. But again, like I told you, I also feel like it's taking a physical toll too. I think I'm actually having physical illnesses starting because I just feel so tense and on watch all the time. But that's the reason why we haven't moved. It's just financially not feasible for us to do this at this time. And some people will say, well, that's stupid. If you're that frightened, go ahead and move. But at the same time, this is what we planned for, what we dreamed for, what he's worked so hard for. And I just have a hard time making that decision to cut all of those plans short. Like I said, after he's worked so hard his whole life to be able to do this.
I can appreciate you feeling that way, but hopefully you'll relocate maybe miles away into a more urban area that's more developed or something so that you just flat out get away from that property. I hope you do that.
I've been thinking about it. We do have another property that, like I said, it's a rental property. It is actually more in town, if what you want to call town. And I have actually, in the back of my mind, thinking rather than starting the rehab on that property to get it ready for sale, maybe we should move into that property and start the rehab on this house and getting it ready to sell first. So I am thinking that.
Well, that sounds like a sound strategy to me. I hope you do that. For the last couple of years, you tried to suppress memories of that encounter. Do you think you helped yourself or hurt yourself by doing that?
I actually think I really hurt myself. I really do. I ended up having to retire from my job the February after this. And it was just due to all at once my blood pressure just started going sky high. And I started having periods of dizziness because of the blood pressure, and just, like I said, that overall feeling of dread, feeling not comfortable here in my own house. And it started to where I don't sleep very well and I don't eat very well. So I think I did myself harm by not researching it at the beginning, trying to find out more about what it was that I saw and what took place. And again, reaching out to somebody that could give me affirmation that I wasn't crazy and help guide me through this.
Well, like I said before, I'm so glad you found me. You think you would have been killed had you not handled yourself the way you did that night. What do you think it was that saved you?
Well, it's like I told you, when I first contacted you. I know I did not scare it. I don't think for 1 second I scared this thing at all. I think I got in between it and its prey, I think it was going after those deer. I actually think that me dropping down and growling back at it, like I told you, I said, I don't think I scared it. I think maybe I might have confused it or stopped it for a second. It's like, here's this crazy woman down on her hands and knees, and I'm growling at her, and she's growling back at me. And, like I said, that's just pure instinct. And that's why I train my dogs. And I really think I was thinking of it as a dog. And it was like trying to establish who was alpha in that situation. And then realizing what this thing was, it's like, oh my God, you're going to die. Leave. Run.
Yeah, when you're placed in a situation like that, it's hard to know how you're going to react. At first glance, it does seem awfully strange that anyone would drop down to their hands and knees and growl at this thing the way you did, but who's going to ever expect to see something like a dog man? So since that was in your training, since you're used to handling situations that way, I guess it's only natural that you fell back onto that. After all, everyone's got a plan until they get punched or run into a dog man.
Right, exactly. Like I told you, in my mind, I'm still thinking dog, regular canine. I'm not thinking of the more deadly aspects of what it was I was looking at. I'm thinking, dog, I'm going to scare it off. No, I think it was trying to come up behind me. I really believe that.
Now that we've had our conversations, how sure are you that it would have killed you if it had the chance?
Well, after talking to you and listening to some other interviews, you say that the likelihood of it actually killing me was probably pretty remote. That it probably wanted to just terrify me out of its territory. And it did that. I'm never going back there again, ever. Now I kind of don't believe that that was its purpose when it started moving off to the right of me. Again, I think it was just moving off and probably just giving me a chance to get out of there so it could continue on with getting to the deer.
Well, I understand, and I think I did a pretty good job of driving this point home in the pre-interview. I don't think it makes a difference whether it was able to sneak up on you or not. If it had killing you on its mind, that's what it would have done that night. The fact that it didn't even lay a claw on you, I think that says everything about its M.O. that night. It wanted to terrify you, but it just didn't have any interest in harming you.
Yeah, and it's like I explained to you, after being up there, and again, this comes back to dog training. After I went to the bathroom and I realized what I was looking at, it's amazing all of the things that go through your mind in such a short span that I immediately thought, oh my God, I just peed in its territory, which is a challenge. And its food is standing right behind me. And it's like all these thoughts, it's like lightning speed, how fast these thoughts come into your mind. And I think that was partly why I thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to die up here on this hill, and no one is going to hear me scream. That's how isolated it is up there.
Yeah, sounds like it is a pretty remote place. And I can understand why you'd feel that urinating like that when it was around might have caused it to think you were challenging its superiority, but I've got no doubts that it did realize that you were a female and not male, and consequently it didn't feel that that was what you were doing. At least I hope that's what was going on.
But like I said, that thought doesn't enter your mind at the time that you're looking at this thing that can just kill you with one swipe. You're thinking, oh my God, what have I just done?
Oh, sure, that's only natural. Your brains ooze out of your ears when you're in a situation like that. You're just reduced to basic functions at that point, so most people aren't going to be able to think clearly. Now that you've had time to analyze your experience, do you wish you would have done anything differently that night?
Yeah, I wish I'd continued on down to my house.
I'll bet.
I wish I'd had a stronger bladder and, just made it down to my house, which is just a mile down the road. And again, for anybody listening, I will say, if you want to get a view of the area and the feel of the area, all you have to do is just Google Fidelity Investments in northern Kentucky and take the satellite view, look for Magellan Drive, And off on the left-hand side, you're going to see that little dirt incline, and you're going to see how remote it is, how wooded it is. And then if you follow down the hill, you're going to start going into neighborhoods where these woods actually back up into these yards I'm telling you about, where we keep seeing things. The other thing that I wanted to mention too was the amount of wildlife that used to be up there. I don't think I said this, but we used to see herds of deer up on the hillside, and you would see flocks of wild turkey. And they were everywhere, and the deer were everywhere. It was very populated. And you'd see foxes running down the road, and tons of rabbits and raccoons and all kinds of things. And then, like I said, about 3 years ago, all at once we started noticing that all the wildlife was disappearing up there. Now there's nothing. There is nothing up there. And I've had people mention, gee, I go up there, I look, and that was the thing. People used to go up there, they'd leave corn and stuff for the deer. And I've had people tell me they haven't seen deer up there in years. And this area is very populated with deer. They're everywhere around here, but they're not up there. And we've got starving coyotes down here in our neighborhood. And now our pets are missing.
Well, I can only imagine how much food something like that would go through in short order, so if that's what's responsible for it, it only makes sense.
There's a great water source up there, too. There's sprinklers everywhere up there. They go off at the same time every night. So they've got plenty of water, and there's berry bushes everywhere up there. And I'll tell you what people used to think. We used to think that, gosh, that would be a great place for homeless people to go and live up there, and they'd be able to live off the land with the deer and the turkeys and all that. And we actually thought for a long time maybe that was what was happening up there. But I don't think so anymore. I think I saw exactly what has taken out the wildlife up there.
You told me that initially you wanted me to tell you that you hadn't seen that dog man. Why'd you want me to do that?
I think I wanted my worldview to stay exactly as it had always been, because I always thought that, like I explained to you, when you're young, you think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And you go through life thinking nothing can touch you, nothing can harm you. If you're careful, if you're alert, watch your surroundings, you're going to go through life and you're going to be fine and okay, and nothing bad is ever going to happen to you. And that's just basically almost everybody's worldview. And I wanted to continue believing that. I wanted to continue believing that nothing bad is going to happen. There really aren't monsters. You can go sit in your backyard and enjoy the summertime with your dogs, and you don't have to be afraid to go out your front door. I wanted to have that security back again. And in the back of my mind, I knew what you were going to tell me. But I was hoping that you were going to tell me you can go back to your safe little world. Everything's okay. Don't worry, darling. And that's not real. That's not the way it is.
Well, you know what they say, you can't fool yourself. I'm glad you've reached the acceptance phase of this. When you have an experience like that, it's easy to think that it's going to be all negative, but having had that experience, do you see any positive things you can take away from it?
Oh, yeah. It's like I told you, like with my friend in Darby. Like I said, I have a wicked sense of humor, and I teased him relentlessly about what he would tell me he was seeing. And I now have a better sense of sympathy and empathy. I will never, ever doubt anything anybody tells me again about this. I will do my best to help them through it. I will explain to them what I went through and how I felt, just so they know they're not alone. And again, I keep coming back to this point. But, when you have this experience, you really doubt your sanity. And I've questioned my sanity for 3.5 years. And again, part of that is my fault. I understand that because I didn't talk to anybody. But I've made up my mind that I will make it easier for anybody that ever wants to talk to me about it. I'll never doubt them. I'll never tell them they're crazy. I'll never tell them that they didn't see what they saw. I know better. It's there.
Whether someone else believes you or not, that doesn't really matter. At least you know the truth now.
Right. People can laugh at me all they want. I don't really care. And I've heard people say that they didn't tell anybody because they were afraid of the scrutiny that they would get and that kind of thing. And that did play a part in why I kept silent about it also. Because I really thought people were just going to look at me and go, "You're nuts, girl. What have you been smoking?" And that kind of thing. And again, that comes back to that loss of control, that feeling of weakness, and having people look at you like there's something wrong with her. She's lost her mind. But now I've made up my mind that I don't really care what anybody thinks now. I know what I saw. I know what happened. I know what's happening right now.
Well, I'm glad you've seen the light. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference at all what someone else thinks about whether you had that encounter or not. You know you had it, you know dogmen are real, and that really is all that matters.
Right, and when we first talked about doing the interview, we were going to do it very anonymously because when I first spoke to you, I still was coming to grips with this and coming to terms with what happened. And that's why I just made up my mind during the course of this interview to tell people where it happened. Go to the satellite view. Look at it. Look at the neighborhood down the hill that I live in. I just made up my mind that it's real. It's there. And stay out of there. Don't go up there.
Yeah, it does sound like a good area to stay away from. Your husband doesn't understand why you do some of the things you do because of that experience. What kind of toll has that taken on you?
It's been a little stressful because I couldn't actually completely explain to him. And again, we're due to go on vacation later on in the summer, and we're going to go to Gatlinburg. And I've been down there before. I love the area. It's beautiful. I love the Smoky Mountains. But suddenly I started becoming afraid of going down there. All I could think about was, you're going back into the woods. And I've never been afraid of being in the woods. We've always gone camping and fishing and boating. And suddenly the thought of being down there in the mountains, in the woods, started to terrify me. And all at once, deliveries started coming to the house that he didn't understand. And it's like I told you, I've bought 3 huge canisters of bear spray. I've bought 2 canisters of police grade pepper spray. And I have 2 air horns. And he's looking at these deliveries and he's like, "Are you getting ready for a war? What's going on here?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, the bears down there." I'm not really concerned about the bears down there. I'm concerned about what we might run into walking the dog at night around the hotel, which is in the middle of town, but I'm still afraid of walking the dog in the middle of the night down in the Smoky Mountains. So I bought an arsenal, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, as long as he doesn't ask you when the M1 Abrams is going to show up, I guess everything's okay.
Well, that might have been next.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to tell me that was going to be showing up next Wednesday.
Yeah. If I thought I could afford it, probably. Yeah, I think it would take something like that. And it's like I told you, when I explained to you what was happening in the backyard and with my dogs and all that. And I told you, I said, I've gotten the shotgun out and gone to the back door. I was going to protect my dogs. And you advised against, unless I had something extremely powerful, don't shoot. And then I thought about it and I'm like, you're probably right. Again, I think I'm a pretty rough, tough girl, but I had to really be honest with myself. I'm like, would you freeze up in that situation? Would you be able to protect your dog? What would you do? Are you going to piss it off more?
Yeah, there is a good possibility that you would just piss it off more. I always tell people, don't shoot a dog, man, unless you're convinced you're going to die anyway. Because if for whatever reason it planned on not attacking you before you shot at it or shot it, yeah, once you do shoot at it or shoot it, it almost assuredly is going to come and try to get back at you. So that's not a good thing.
Right, and it's like I told you, I questioned you heavily when we first spoke about it being down here in the yards, and I even asked you, I was like, after having to go to the bathroom up there and the way it sniffed the air, I asked you, was there a possibility that it has my scent? Is that why this is all happening down here in my yard?
And like I told you, there's a good possibility that's what's going on there. It remembered your scent from up there at Fidelity, and since you only live a mile away from Fidelity in the first place, there's a strong possibility that it cruises through your neighborhood all the time. Yeah, maybe it picked up your scent when it was in that area of your house, and now it knows where you live. Maybe that is what's at the root of all this.
And it's like I explained to you, it's only certain houses. It's my neighbor's houses on either side of me and mine, and mine's in the middle, and then it's directly across the street, and that's the house that backs up into the soccer area, which backs up into the wooded area that starts to go up the hill. And mind you, there's more streets back there with houses on them, but they're kind of dark and desolate back there. And there are wooded areas that you can travel through all across those streets to get back up the hill. And it's like I said, I wonder if it just completely depleted its prey up there, and now it's coming down into the neighborhood and picked up my scent. Because it's just around our houses here. It's like a little circle.
I hope that's not what's going on here, but there's a strong possibility that that is what's going on. Well, having said that, Susan, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, I do. To people that are just cruising YouTube and come across your channel and they listen to some of these interviews and they're sitting back and they're laughing, thinking, oh, this can't possibly be real, like I used to do. They are real. There's no doubt about it. It will rock your world when you see one. Don't make it angry. Don't try to shoot it. Get away from it as fast as you can and learn some sympathy and some empathy for other people when they tell you about their experiences. That's the most important thing I can tell you. Don't doubt another person. It might just happen to you, and like I said, it might just shatter your world, and it's hard to come back from. And that's the only thing I can tell people.
Well, that's very well said, Susan. Again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing that experience with us. Thank you so much.
Dick, thank you so much for having me and for speaking to me and helping me through this. I can honestly tell you, you probably helped save my sanity, and I can't thank you enough.
You know you're welcome. If you ever relapse or need help, you know how to find me. I'll always be here for you. Have a great night, okay?
All right, you too, and thank you. Bye.
Bye.